First of all, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. First of all, I'll explain what I do. Back in 1998, I started to see cemeteries, and the artwork and the doctrine of the resurrection, all of this was just wonderful. And that was all kind of new. People didn't know much about what was going on in cemeteries. So anyways, there was all this good stuff. And I wanted to make a good study of what is in our local cemetery. So I decided to do it by the boundaries of the Oneida County. That was going to be my boundaries. And that I was a new driver even. I was 40 and only had just learned to drive. And so I didn't know much about the county, so I got to learn about our wonderful county and the many seasonal roads and rural where there's supposed to be a cemetery. But anyways, so this book, The Cemeteries of Oneida County, and all these gizmos. So it takes each town in the county and lists all the cemeteries and sort of tells you where they are. You just had to find them. So that's what I did, and I would set out and do the cemeteries, and I was looking for certain things, like the blue zinc stones. I wanted to record. Where do you find these things? What I did not know is that I was going to get into this wonderful world of the Irish presence in the cemeteries. And like I had never heard of Ansville and Florence, you're learning all these places. And I was driving to them around just before and after 9/11 when gas was $5 a gallon, and I'm coming from North Utica. So anyways, here's Ireland and all the different counties. And so here's Europe, and over there is America. And everything I'm going to say is going to show up in these in the cemeteries. So basic Irish history, everybody's trying to take it over and just use it as a buffer or a colony, etc. You've also got, and in those troublesome times, the famines and these things called plantations, etc., they're desperate, and so they're heading out to America, to Canada. Canada will, the thing called coffin ships. It was a sure death trip if you were trying to make it to Canada. Because, and I do a lot with the abolition stuff, a slave, at least, the ship owner was designed to sell these slaves. The Irish could come over, he just had to get a fare. It didn't matter what happened to them as they got over there. The trip to Canada was really bad. And at so in around 700, you've got the Celts. The Celts are all over Europe, France, Switzerland, Austria, but they are identified by their artwork and a certain way of war, etc. So there's these Celtic tribes that end up in Ireland, and the artwork we're going to see. But that's when the Irish start to discover themselves, that they are a people who had intelligence. The monks from 400 to 800 are moving across Europe with the gospel in beautiful artwork, learning, reading. So much is happening, and around 1870, Ireland, through some archaeology of Celtic, you'll see this, you'll discover the beautiful Celtic work. The universities are learning that, hey, we should be studying Gaelic, the languages nobody speaks anymore, the artwork, the history, and why did we put down these people? And you've got also the rise of let's be our own nation, not under the rule of Great Britain, etc. So this is all going to show up. So I'm going through the cemeteries. Now, most of these will be in Forest Hill. Gerard is here, the head of Forest Hill. And so most of these will be in Forest Hill, St. Agnes, and Calvary, or not Calvary, Clinton. But they're scattered throughout. They're scattered throughout when you get these, what we would call the Celtic gravestones. They're scenic. I call them famous. Like this plot, when you come into Forest Hills, the first things you'll see. This is the Mr. Rutger Bleecker Jewett, Mrs. Sophia Jewett, Miss Blandina Dudley Miller. Okay, they've got this family. And this is typical of the Irish Celtic stones. If you're going to do one, let's everybody get one. That's very Celtic. You'll see in the artwork. Don't just stop here. You know, with the lacings and things, we don't stop. If we got something good, we're going to keep going at it. But I wanted to tell people about these. So, the Celtic stones, they're very scenic. Whoops, that shouldn't be there. The next plot up, House of the Good Shepherd. Celtic stones are thick, sturdy, strong and protective, wonderful for orphanages. They'll often be used in the military plots. The Celtic stones can hold their own against angels and towers and fancy bathtubs. The Celtic stones dominate the scene. They're tall. You know, they're 16, 18, 20 some feet. Gerard said he'd like to see more. Not many cemeteries want the danger of a big stone, but they're crowd pleasers. And let's see now, the next one. This is the Celtic artwork. And just look at all that is carved into there. This is at the top of that stone we just saw. So you've got to strain to see it, but hey, let's just put as much artwork on there as we can. So that's at the top, and there's all kinds of swirls. That's the back of the stone. Just the back. On these Celtic stones, which are so full of artwork, you've got to look on the back, because they often just duplicate it. Let's just keep going and put it all on the back also, or an entirely different design. You got to pay for that. But they got a good thing going, they just keep going. Oh, that's supposed to not that way. Darn it.
I like that.
You know, I worked hard to make sure these were all upright. Now, unfortunately, Celtic, you know, they were a warrior people. There was cannibalism. There was a tough group. And this is I call this a vicious stone. This is not a typical Maltese cross. This is a mean-looking Celtic stone. You can see the individuals. They look like weapons. I just, yeah. And yet, as I was thinking about it, the cross of Christ is not a pretty thing. It is a mean and vicious. Many Catholic cemeteries would not allow the Celtic crosses because it was pagan. So you often will not see this in a cemetery that's just for Catholics. The Celtic crosses are devotional. You have that tall cross and then these big pedestals. And just like they were originally back in 800 AD, they were devotional items at a crossroads or a boundary for a church. And the pedestal was to where, as if you were kneeling and had something to think about. So on a proper Celtic cross is devotional. And so the bottom of this one, like Jesus mercy, there's a phrase. You think there should be Lord have mercy or something, just Jesus mercy. I don't know if that's a Catholic, Irish Catholic thing, but it shows up on the Irish stones. They're devotional. Look at those carvings. In the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those Gospels have animal symbols. And when you've got these big paddles on a Celtic cross, you put pictures on them, you do things with it. Just beautiful. So this is Matthew, not Matthew. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Somebody's the lion. But it's not Matthew. It must be Mark. And if you're familiar with the illuminated manuscripts that the monks would make, many of the letters and animals and pictures are all surrounded by red dots. Dot, 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 dot. And look at the carving. Yeah. These are not scratched in. This is all carved away. So much texture and work. This is, again, at Forest Hill. Scenes from Jesus' life. And this is right across from the Munson Williams plot. And this wonderful saying, you've got, like the Irish very much do in this, here's all the family, okay? And Almighty God, we beseech thee graciously to behold this thy family. Just wonderful. And there's a circle of Latin up there with something about us sinners, probably that there's forgiveness for us sinners. There you are. Yes. They're crowd pleasers, okay? And so I have a lot of fun. On tours, I always show anything Celtic. Maynard Cemetery, we got a girl here who runs that. There's a Celtic cross. You always put it into the cemetery tours. But they're accessible. You just, all these Irish stones, which I'll show you in a minute, there's nothing like them in the cemeteries. And even if they're not Celtic, they're very accessible. And, you know, the old song, there's a lilt of Irish laughter. There's a friendliness to much of what you see. But anyways, we have a lot of fun with those. So this is the artwork of the Celts. Okay, now this is from 50 BC. See that twisted roping? Okay, now this is the main identifier for the Celts. They would wear these torques around their neck when they discover a dead body or pictures or something. They'll have that torque around their neck. So you see that, and then you see all carved around, front and back and all over the place. So that's one of the features on a Celtic stone, where it derives from. Wow. This is the Celts were great at carving wood and carving metal. And it's just full of the spirals and knots and lacings. And these are the hoards they would dig up from the ground. They're still finding these. And so you see all those designs, and there we go. That's one of those gravestones. You'll just see them. Each of those loops has 8 different designs, and it goes right up. That's that tall stone we saw before. Right up. Everybody, they're all different. And they do it all on the back. And that big surrounding rope is carved to make it look like a twig. The original that they're copying from in Ireland or Scotland, that's where they often are. If you've been there, you've seen these things. Those are all snakes. We are very fortunate that our Forest Hill doesn't have it all in snakes, okay? And they would use that as a symbol of the new life in Christ. That's a bad image. Snakes for the symbol of the new life in Christ. No. Okay, so up and up and up it goes. Why are these this way?
It's interesting. It gets you.
Yeah, I know. They're not on my flash drive like that. The illuminated manuscripts. So while I'm going through the cemetery learning about seeing all these Irish things, I'm starting to read Irish history, and church history is my big thing, and you just gotta love those old Irish monks. And they did these, beautiful illuminated manuscripts. So that's the lettering that you'll often see on these gravestones. What I did find out, that thing of how the Irish saved civilization? They're the ones that give us literacy. They separated words. They made paragraphs. They made upper and lower case. All these things that we take for granted, and how could we learn otherwise? That's from those Irish monks. And the writing, now these parts are fancy and they do a lot with that. But when you're going to actually, the text of the Bible, that lettering it's readable. And it's considered clear versus a lot of old Bibles are in this heavy German Gothic. Think of your fonts on the computer. Gothic is hard to read. People say these were not meant to be read, but they were designed for easy reading. And they're beautiful. And they would, so the Celtic stones we see now, they would copy, these are like 800 AD. They would copy and then improve on what you would see when you were over in Europe. And there's an artifact that they call it St. Patrick's Bell, the case for it, but you could see, okay? We got it, all the swirls and everything. So, I say, I've got to, show people what we've got in these cemeteries. So, I take my book, and like I do everything, I'll go alphabetically through the county. A is for Ansville. Okay, I never heard of Ansville. Voila, the first thing I see is St. Patrick's Cemetery, and it's got the green posts. I thought, well, I could get that. All the Irish things I find are very accessible. And unfortunately, it's the only St. Patrick Church, St. Patrick Cemetery, that does something green. But this was my first introduction. Why is it doing this? I don't get it.
It's a conversation piece.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so most of the Irish will be Catholic and buried in a Catholic cemetery. And the Catholics, the older Catholic churches and their cemeteries, they decide what your stone is going to be. There's no decorations, everything's the same. And it's that slanted cross that was your decoration. So you could go, and they're often, the older ones are these really ugly, clunky stones with this chunky slanted cross, which I think is how they illustrate the way Jesus would carry it on the way to Calvary. So that's what you would get. But when I'm looking around, all those Irish names, you'll just see gravestones with, the slanted cross, but it'll be O'Hara, Murphy, Kelly. You've got to smile. You just have to smile when you see the Irish names. Especially when you've been going through the cemeteries and it's all Stefanovich and Werzycek, all those other ones. And I grew up, even since kindergarten, listening to record albums of Irish railroad songs, and Frank Parker sings Irish ballads, and I was very familiar with the names. And so I would just always smile that the Irish stones are very accessible, and they're in groups. So Murphy and Scannell and Johnson's and everybody's right around the same area. You can't help but smile a little bit when you see a lot of Murphys and Kellys. Then I noticed, I always call them clovers, you'll see why. But I've seen everybody puts a clover on there, a shamrock on their gravestone when they were allowed to put a symbol. And I would see that everywhere. in all kinds of forms. And no other group does that. The Irish have their little clover, and everybody knows what it is. You can put it fancy, plain, colored, outline, whatever. Everybody knows that's Irish. And they're the only group. The Welsh could have a daffodil, but nobody does. They don't do it. Canada maple leaf, it'd have to look exactly like that. The Irish are the only ones who do that. And again, it's very accessible. No explanation needed. So it got me starting to look for where's the earliest clover on the stones. And this is in Clinton, St. Mary's. Elizabeth Bellew, B-E-L-L-E-W, 1857. And if you picked a clover from your yard, we're so used to the kind of cartoonish way people draw the shamrocks. They don't, the stubby little stem. But if you picked up one, you're always surprised. It's a long, graceful stem. And that's the earliest version in our county. And I just love it. But again, they didn't scratch that into the granite. It's carved away for this thin, graceful line. It's raised. So even then, we're getting very artistic. But this is what you get now, okay? Now, you generally do not get yourself a Celtic cross, but the Irish now, the rule of a slanted cross and nothing else, that seems to have ended, and now the cross is upright, and you can just hear the Irish people saying, well, if I'm going to have a cross, it's going to be a Celtic one, and I don't want it tipped to its side. It's got to be straightened up. And they put the clovers in whatever way. Nice looking stones. I was not aware how skilled craftsmen the Irish heritage is. And yet, I know about the lace work and the woodwork and everything, but it's on the gravestone too. So nice looking designs. That's what you get now. And Brian, this is Brian's stone. They're all in a row. You go up to Mount Olivet. You just have to drive around. And it's one Irish stone after another. It's green. If you get up close, you can order a green granite. Let's see what I don't believe this. The Newmans, this is blue sparkles, and it's tasteful. I was worried about when color would start to come into the cemeteries, because that could be gaudy, but I like it. I like it. So very, very creative. They don't look as tall as they are. But this is, but if you're up in Mount Olivet, this is what you could probably afford if you wanted to spend some loot for a Celtic cross. They're very flat. You know, you can tell it's a machine made, even though it's very decorative. If it belongs to any of you, it's a very nice stone. It's just very machine made. But interesting, they've got the Canada leaf, and you just say, I hope they know their Canadian-Irish heritage. Yeah. Amidst all the art and the accessibility of all these Irish stones and the cute names, there's an underlying pathos and sorrow that you know associated with them. And my favorite Irish stone, little Michael Patrick Griffin, and he's, just 2002, but he's got his little clovers there. If you're Irish, my phrase is, if you're Irish, it goes on the gravestone. And there's a lot of proper boastful pride in being Irish. And this says an Irishman is buried here. And the Catholic cemeteries are, it's got that terrible abortion. They make baby areas now. They're not, little Patrick is to be remembered. So I'm traveling around up to Florence. Okay, I never heard of Florence, next to Annsville. And I call it Irish capital of the county. Picture the date. Ignore the dates. My camera. Picture that day, okay? I still remember this day. It was just wonderful. It's the end of February. You know, the weather is crisp and clear, and I was just out there. Wonderful day at St. Mary's Cemetery. And right as you get there, Murphy, Riley, Murphy, and Murphy. And very Irish. And so while we were there, guess who, Heidi? That's my husband. I'm out there, and I'll tell you why. I'm out there having a ball with the gravestones. And we ran into this elfin lady who was so excited because in 2 weeks they were announcing the winner of a trip to Ireland. And she was so excited. It was so close to St. Patrick's Day. She loved that we wanted to know everything about the cemetery and their new Stations of the Cross and everything in Florence. You know, the natural bridge, and it was just endless stories. And my husband was having a ball with her, and I'm out here because the stones were just Finnegan, Flanagan. This is Timothy Finnegan marrying Joanna O'Leary. I was having a ball. But there was this another reason. But anyways, before I get to that, see at the top, native of Macroom, County Cork, Ireland.
Wow.
A typical Irish stone has native of, and they'll list the county whatever. And remember at the beginning, I showed you that map with all the counties. I think every one of those is on here. They come from all over. But that's one of my favorite things to see, native of. So that's typical. That's when I start to think of they had to leave Ireland under desperate, horrible circumstances, coming to wherever they settle. And I often wonder, in those Irish congregations, there was a thing of, I want to be buried back in Ireland. And that was a different kind of coffin ship, where people wanted to be buried back in Ireland, and they'd load their coffin, and often in chunks. There's Thurlow Weed, if you remember him, would write, wow, what was this big cargo on the ship? And it's the people coming back to Ireland to be buried. And I'm wondering, whenever I see that, within the Irish congregations, was there, gee, I'd like to be back in Ireland, and wow, he gets to go back to Ireland. And was that a thing in the Irish communities? So I always appreciate that. So I'm going through, now I'm talking about accessibility, things you just, like the clovers, you know it's Irish. If you didn't know anything about a gravestone, and you had to draw one, what would you do? You'd do this, and you'd put R.I.P., right? I'm going through there's 400 cemeteries in the county. And this was one of the last I had done. I'm going through hundreds and thousands of gravestones, and I'm not seeing R.I.P. Requiescat in pace, rest in peace. I'm not seeing it. I get up to Florence. Gravestone after gravestone after gravestone. Requiescat in pace. And then I'm going through my pictures preparing for this talk, and I find the old marbles that have native of County Limerick, and the marbles all scrunchy and worn, and I'm seeing they have Requiescat in pace. And they'll often write it as, may his soul rest in peace, amen, or they'll do that. So I'm wondering, just like that old phrase, Jesus mercy, just those two words that appear on the Irish stones, why does this famous phrase, R.I.P., only occur on the Irish stones? I didn't know if that was an Irish funeral liturgy that's not in the Italian. I don't know, but it's an Irish thing. I just don't know. Same as that phrase, Jesus mercy. It shows up on the Irish stones. Why there? But that's, I was blown away when I saw this. So, famous people started to get into when Ireland becomes a thing to study, a respectable thing to study. There's this, one book of mine says, an outburst of scholarly activity. And the people who designed gravestones said, okay, we'll make gravestones reflecting our Irish heritage. So many people who could afford these fancy stones would have it. This is Forest Hill. This is the Horatio Seymour plot. So I'm going through Horatio Seymour biographies. They don't even mention the plot. Anybody, whether you are just O'Hara with a slanted stone or you've got a fancy thing, people who write about somebody, or if you are doing your genealogy, show a picture. Where's the gravestone? What does it look like? And talk about what that plot is. How does it compare to other stones? Whatever. But you'll see a Horatio Seymour biographies never even mention it. And this is his nephew or son.
Wow.
Forest Hill. That's an Art Deco.
Yeah.
Celtic. I could never figure it out. When you start looking up, I'll do things like look up art styles in the gravestones. And I could never figure out what this is. It might be Cubist, it might be Art Deco, but so let's say I'm studying Art Nouveau, and I'll walk around, and then it'll click what certain stones are like. Is this creative? And I've got to find out if this is the only one, if this is a genuine original. And our gravestone studies group can help me with that. But this is the Seymour plot. So something about being Irish and the heritage, these are intelligent plots. This was important to them, and it goes on to their kids themselves. Forest Hill, this is another intelligent plot. Look at the setting, it's scenic. The Celts were in France. So you've got this stone is floral without the big pedestal. That's a French Celtic. And this is the Irish Celtic. Gridley and Sicard. These are intelligent people who quickly latched on to these scholarly studies and said, I want this and I want it specific like that. Beautiful. Then I'm going around, okay, now I found Requiescat Pace, but I'm looking, I'm saying, what else could be a symbol for Ireland? What else could they put on that people would know? The harp. I said, I haven't seen any harps around, even on the modern stones, no harps. So I find one, St. Agnes Cemetery. This is the Marr, I think you say it Marr, M-A-H-E-R, the Marr brothers. And my husband was born in 1950, and the Marr brothers were a clothing store on Liberty Street, and he said that's where all men and boys went to learn to dress properly. And they used the harp, and born in Carlow. Yeah, Carlow. The reason he's using the harp is because he's into let's be independent of Britain. We're going right back to those Celts. Not even a shamrock on there. And it took me a while to figure this out. There's this harp. Again, there's the strings of the harp. They could have just maybe scratched it in, but no. They dig it. Skinny little lines. They make all that effort to do that. But this is his advertisement, and I couldn't figure this out. We obviously have, clovers and a new day. Like, why would a clothing store need this big? It's not a Celtic warrior. What's going on here? Remember, they're the Mar brothers. He's got it written on there, Mars on his belt. This is the god of war. So next week, or whatever that talk on the Irish uprising is, this is the Mar brothers. They were probably, if you talked to them, I bet it was everything. Irish, we got to be free, or whatever. Bet they're spending their money, giving aid over there. And there's books on Oneida County people, and I wonder if they would write that, he was a member of the Gaelic League or something. But that's what the Mar Brothers stone is all about. So, as I end, Heidi, that's Sam. I used to take all the kids, if you ever did my tours, we always took the kids from the church, where each had their stations on the tours. And this little boy he always wanted to go to Ireland. And so I took him around, let me show you Ireland in Oneida County. So we did that. This is a stone, so I'm going to end here. This is a stone in Clinton, St. Mary's. And you've got to see it. It's the animals, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, up there. They each have their carving. The lion is so cute. And you have to see it before it wears away. But take anybody. Take your grandkids. Take your sister and brother who come. How could you not be entertained by any of this? Go to any of those cemeteries. And so my final wish for you is that you too are looking for the mercy of Jesus Christ, and in life and in death, that you also rest in peace in the arms of our Good Shepherd. So I thank you for coming. Any questions, comments? Yes, she's asking me, do they have people who carve? Yes, there are, believe it or not. Buried granite in Vermont would make you anything you want. There are fabulous artists, though, using old slate. Because this is a new thing. People want it. You're going to pay for it, but you can do that. And it all depends on what cemetery wants, big, etc. Yes?
Is anything known about the carvers of those Celtic crosses?
See, you're fascinated with them too. I am.
That's the hard part. I do have a book by a Buffalo architect, I think he's 1929, called The Most Beautiful Cemeteries in the World. Many of them are from Forest Hill. And one of those Celtic crosses, they don't mention, though, the actual person. They will describe, though, the front and the back of why it looks like that, etc. But in all of the cemetery work, finding who carved these things is a challenge.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
Isn't it a shame? Yes, yes.
They're all Italian.
The Italians are good, but there's a lot of German and Welsh. The Welsh are stone carvers. And I wonder, Jones was a company here, and I often wonder if you can't get into the Welsh end because they're picking up on that spiral theme. And their stones are thick, and they've got a lot of personality, so I often wonder if some of the Welsh are doing it. But yeah, in the cemetery world, I'll get you in a minute, in the cemetery world, the East Europeans give us the idea of permanent, and the Italians give us flower gardens and gorgeous women with flowing hair, beautiful sculptures. The Irish give us art for every man, very accessible. Yes?
My Irish ancestors from Wexford, several of them were stonemasons who settled in West Winfield area. And I was wondering if maybe they also if there were carvers as well.
Wow,
That'd be nice
Wow.
to know, huh?
wow.
I thought you were gonna mention that, that a lot of them coming over were.
With those skills.
Yes.
Growing up, my grandfather was that was his thing, building cemeteries, mausoleums, and I never knew that. I could have had all those fun years, and my family said, "Oh, we used to always go through the cemeteries." And no, I did not know about that. Yeah. Yes.
It's not Irish cemeteries, but I have found a book about old cemeteries and carvers. And at one time, they would leave some little mark at the base of the stone. So you might want to start looking for a repeat of some small mark, and that would help you identify a carver.
I can imagine that would happen, and I'm always looking for something, but they're often under the ground or they just don't have it.
Yeah.
But interesting.
And a lot of people came from Connecticut, you said? Was it Windsor, Connecticut? There are a lot of stone carvers in Connecticut, and of course Vermont, that came to this area.
Yes. Connecticut is. I'm the village historian in Whitesboro, and it all starts from Connecticut. It all starts from Connecticut after the Revolution. Yeah. In fact,
We're from Wexford, County Wexford.
County Wexford? I've seen it on a gravestone. In fact, just a quick blurb. This is, America 250th, and I'm obligated to do an America 250th spiel of something. What I found out when I'm looking up Irish names, etc., when England decides to start making colonies, they start with the Irish, and it's a good, such as, let's confiscate their properties, and if they rebel, they're treason, etc., etc. Let's decide a new way of how you inherit things. It was one of those Irish songs, the strangers tried to come and teach us their way. They scorned us for being who we are. You can see how that develops into trying to make a colony out of America and why we would rebel, etc. And it's still in the Christian world of forgiveness. We're still good friends with England, of course. But anyway, studying the Irish will help you learn about American freedoms. Okay. One more question and then we've got to go, but you can talk to me at lunch. Okay. Well, we're done. Okay, Mark. Thank you.